There you go. Hi, everyone. Really happy to introduce you to my very small Ghosts and the Paranormal panel with James Murphy. Do you want to start us off, James, with an intro to you and your books?
Okay, right. Well, I'm James Murphy. I'm a crime fiction writer from Northern Ireland, as my accent has probably already alerted you to. I am the author of two book series. First one being a Belfast detective series called Farshit Investigations Belfast, which has quite a supernatural theme going through, which we'll discuss later on. And the other is a psychological thriller series, the debut novel of which was released back in February this year, called Write Me a Murder.
Which I think I interviewed you for.
You did, and gave me a very lovely review of shortly after. Thank you.
Welcome. So, before we get going, and this one, the important question to ask on any Ghost and the Paranormal panel, who's your favourite Ghostbuster?
Oh, I have to know their names. Eagle, probably.
Is that because he's the only one you can name?
Because I was thinking of the actors and then the characters. And then the cartoon as well, because I'm old enough to remember the cartoon too.
Yeah, I remember the cartoon.
So yeah, I think that's my favourite Ghostbuster.
Just I liked your face. You weren't expecting that question.
No, I know already that this is going to descend into 80s nerd chat at some point.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, we can't promise it won't, will we? What made you want to include a thread of that in your books then? So going on to your far set investigations, why did you weave a thread of paranormal in? What's the interest in doing it?
I think a lot of it was actually based on the background of how the book came to be. I think I've told you this story before, but during the time I was toying with the idea of being a writer, about 10 years ago now, actually, I had a friend come visit the house, and the friend had been talking about visiting her granny. And I was thinking to myself, I'm pretty sure this girl's granny's dead. And yeah, the conversation kind of moved on to, and it transpired that she had gone to visit a psychic medium. And I love all those kind of TV programs about the paranormal and all that sort of stuff. So I would be quite a geek that way. And so there was lots of conversation around mediums and the paranormal, and she kind of dared me to go and visit a medium. And when I went to the medium, one of the things that came out during the visit was that spirit, let's just say, was very aware that I was toying with writing this book and dabbling a little bit in it. And really I should be getting on with it and just doing it. And I suppose that I came away from it thinking, wow, I mean, that's just such an amazing thing. And then I've Farshit Investigations is a very particular place. It's set on in the building, I should say, that was once my primary school. And what I didn't realize the whole way through my primary school years, even though it was quite a spooky place, I didn't know that it was actually known in paranormal circles as the most haunted building in Ireland. So I had that, and I had the medium. And actually, when I met the medium as a character, he kind of was very much larger than life. So those things all kind of came together, and I thought I really would quite like to bring that element in. But as a fledgling crime writer, if you like, at that stage, I was also thinking, but you can't do it in such an obvious way that, you know, every time you come up against a plot hole, then the medium gets a vision. So I decided to include the medium, but not use it as a cop out, if that makes sense. So I had it that if he was in a situation where he became stressed or upset in any sense, it disrupted his link to the paranormal. and a lot of the certainly the first novel um, was about a family linked to him that had fallen into the wrong hands, so to speak. So a lot of it was it's kind of his disrupted link to the paranormal. So I think I got around it that way.
We've got some hellos from Sarah, Claire, and Donna. Sarah said she likes Gozer, aka the Marshmallow Man in the Ghost book.
Oh yeah. Don't
Oh.
know. It always would have been Slimer for me if we're going down that route.
Yeah, I guess if you. Well, I mean, there's another good question, isn't it? What's your favourite fictional ghost?
Oh.
You could have books, TV, or movies.
Yeah, a list of questions beforehand would have been great, Caroline. Favorite
Where's the fun in that?
um oh, but my mind's just gone blank, and I love all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Maybe
Later when you get an answer.
I'll come off the thing and think, why did I not say that one? Maybe I'm trying to think of like films that really kind of freaked me out ghost wise. And I'd say The Woman in Black would be up there.
Well, that is really
I,
scary.
I can't think of any others. I mean, certainly figures from not actual ghosts, but figures from scary stories I could probably name more of. As ones I was going to say admire, but you know what I mean. Favorite ones. No, I can't think of anyone other than that.
Donna says it's less fun if you have questions in advance, but she can only think of.
Yeah, probably true.
But she can only think of Casper.
Casper's a good one. Rent a ghost characters. I don't know.
I'm gonna sound really smart here. There's a Canterville ghost in Oscar Wilde.
Oh yeah, of course.
But the only reason I know this is because I'm making a jigsaw of like Oscar Wilde things downstairs, so it's in my head.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I wouldn't have gone there. That's probably a bit too highbrow for me.
Well, I just thought there was an Irish connection there that you might have been,
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
you know, you might have appreciated.
Of course. No, I do appreciate it. I probably just wouldn't have gone there. Um, yeah, I have images of Scooby Doo now in my head and trying to think of the famous ghost from that, but it was always just
It was
something
always just the amusement park owner or someone, wasn't it? But Scooby Doo are probably my favourite, like, spooky investigators. You can't beat a Scooby Doo episode.
Yeah, it's been a while. Spooky investigators now, you've got me thinking. I don't know. I probably would go down more reality in inverted commas TV there with like things like I was a huge fan of Derek Okora when he was alive. The whole most haunted thing. And Derek Okora's Ghost Towns to the point where my wife was like buying me the DVDs and stuff for Christmas.
Wow. So do you think if you were writing, like, about I'm trying to go back to your writing so we don't just spend the entire time talking about, like, movies and things. I'm trying to be sensible. Do you think if you were writing, like, paranormal stuff, because we would have had Karen on here, and her book is not in any way scary, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
She writes about the paranormal. It's kind of more of like, a story about kind of life after death. So do you think that when you're writing about it, does it have to be spooky, or do you think it's
Um, I don't think so. No. I mean, I have written about it a little bit in terms of how my character deals with his gift at various stages in his life and how it reacts to the different situations he's put into. So for example, I did write about at one stage him being put under a kind of a psychic attack and how that affected him. And I think in terms of how I handled it, it went much more. It might have been a kind of a forerunner for the idea that I wanted to go down the psychological thriller route. But I think I dealt with it much more psychologically in terms of its effect on him rather than the actual the I suppose how scary it was, for the reader. And I think probably a lot of what makes it more scary is how realistic probably you can create it. So there could be something really frightening in maybe everyday events, depending on how you frame it.
There is a bit of a love for like spooky things in general, isn't there? So, like you were saying, you went to somewhere that was like the most haunted primary school. But I
Mhm.
feel like as a nation, we love claiming things are really haunted.
Yeah, I think so. Unless it's your house.
Don't we?
I
We
would
love
say.
a good spooky story. Like,
But yeah, I think we do love a good spooky story, and I think yeah, I think you're right as a nation that we do like to spend a lot of time on the edge of our seats, if that makes sense. And I think that crossover between um, the kind of the scary story and the crime story that has a very similar effect, which I think is probably why kind of the horror genre and the crime genre are probably the two most consumed in every sense. Just not books and in general, but also film and TV, as we know.
I was going to say, I think it's why they blend so well. It's why you can blend something like a medium into a crime story and things as well, because you kind of do have that. A lot of horror, you can have quite a lot of crime in it, can't you? And they merge quite seamlessly.
Yeah, they merge really, really well. I've literally just recently finished Stuart Neville's new novel, Blood Like Mine, um, which, I mean, Stuart's obviously a well-established crime fiction author, and this is a crime fiction book, but it's about vampires. And it's brilliant, and it's just an example of how you can blend it so well. Um, and I know that when I was writing Write Me a Murder, and some of the reviews were coming in on it, for me, I was just thinking, for me, it's a page turner. I want people to want to not be able to put it down. But some of the reviews I were getting back were, I had to stop reading this for a while because I was getting frightened, and I had to kind of take a break from it. Other people were, yes, they were devouring it in one go. But I thought, when I was writing it, I intended it to be, edge of the seat. I didn't intend it to be, "Oh, I need to take a break from this. It's too much." So yeah, it's hard to kind of. I suppose different people have different reactions and different levels of what frightens them. But yeah, we're all kind of united in a love of that kind of fiction, I think.
Chris Brookmeyer, I talked to him recently, and he recommended Stuart Neville's new book as well.
Yeah, it's been when I say reading it, I did it on Audible because a lot of the time I would be for part of my job I would be going to visit like schools in remote parts of Northern Ireland, so I don't get much time to physically actually sit down with a book. And yeah, it kept me um, suitably alert as I was driving around the kind of quite isolated, spooky parts of Northern Ireland on my own.
What has been the spookiest thing you've ever read then?
Spookiest thing I've ever
Or like
read.
the scariest thing, maybe. As that's how I should have worded it. The thing
Um,
that's actually given you a sleepless night or two.
I think when I was younger, probably kind of teenager, I stumbled across the Anne Rice novels, the Interview with the Vampire and all that. And that was long before the film. And there was one that went particularly deep. I think it was called, I hope I'm pronouncing this properly, Memnoch the Devil. And it was literally about the fall of the, oh, who's the archangel now? Is it Michael? Is it Michael? Can't remember. But it literally deals with, it was all about how angels become angels and how eventually fallen angels, become demons, and how they roam the earth and so on. And for me as a teenager, it was compulsive reading, but yeah, I was terrified then beyond that. Um, Other than that, I suppose that novels that you maybe wouldn't necessarily find or think of as being scary, or give you moments like that. I mean, something like To Kill a Mockingbird, for example. There's a particular scene in To Kill a Mockingbird where the narrator, the young Scout Finch, is walking across, I think it's a football field on Halloween night in a ham costume. So that she's surrounded in kind of chicken wire with this stuff over it, to make her look like a ham. And she gets attacked, and because of the way she's dressed, she can't see properly what's going on. So, and because she's telling the story, we're kind of living it through her sight, if you like. And I found that really scary. Um, so yeah, I suppose there are books that set out to do it, and books that you maybe think wouldn't make you think that way, but do, which I quite like, have to say, when you're not expecting it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, deliberately setting out to be scary. I think the thing I found the most terrifying is Shirley Jackson's like Haunting of Hill House. And I had to read it in the day, and I couldn't leave until I finished because I had to know what happened. I was like, I can't. This is too scary. And I kind of didn't want to read it, but I didn't want to leave it and not know.
Well, I suppose here's a question for you then, in that sense, because I know the book and it's really good. If you're reading a scary story and you know it's one that's going to be like it's meant to be a scary story, do you wait until it's dark and it's you're quite isolated and you're alone, and you get the kind of full, you're putting yourself in an environment where you'll get the full chill out of it, or is it during the day with all the lights on?
No, I'd be during the day with all the lights on because I'm an absolute wimp. I like get really scared really easily. When I was little, and I still do this sometimes if I read a really scary book, but I don't believe it anymore. But when I was little, I used to think the book characters could come out of books. So if I read something scary, I'd stack really heavy books on top of it so they couldn't escape.
Oh, I wish I'd thought of that when my daughter was younger.
And the
No, I'm
Haunting of
old
Hill
enough
House
to
still
lift
had
up my
that
sleeve.
effect. I'd finished it and piled it high. It was like I kind of reverted back to the childhood fear. It's like, no.
No, because I would tend to, um, kind of dim lights, and kind of wait until nighttime when it's quiet and so on, and go off and get properly chilled. I don't know why, like.
Are you a fan of horror movies and things as well? And will you watch like a
Yeah, I would. Well, no, when I say horror, not the kind of gory, the like the Saw and stuff like that. I would have no interest in. I was a huge fan of the Halloween franchise, even though that is a bit gory, but it's much more kind of it's that giving you that jump, isn't it? Kind of giving you that scare throughout. Um, and obviously, you love a good evil character to be getting on with. So yeah, I do like those. Recently, I saw the remake of Salem's Lot, and I remember that from growing up. I think there was a film first, and then there was a mini series with David Soul from Starsky and Hutch in it. And I remember watching that again, maybe late teens, and being terrified of a particular scene where there's a wee kid knocking at the window, like a vampire knocking at the window. Um, and the recent remake included that scene again, and it probably wasn't as good, to be fair, but it still gave me a chill because it brought me back to where I was, the last time I saw it. But yeah, definite fan of that type of horror movie. But when it comes to Saw and maybe things like Nightmare on Elm Street, not so much.
So how do you go about like building that kind of evil character and tension yourself in your books? So those are the things we like in a kind of a creepy thing. How do you think you go about doing that?
Um, I don't. Well, I suppose from a premise point of view, you're probably thinking it's that old chestnut of what's the worst thing that could happen. Um, and if you create a situation where the worst thing that can happens, then who makes it happen? And that's, I suppose, that's your way into the evil character. But for me, particularly in the Write Me a Murder book, um, which is not the book we're supposed to be talking about today, but
We'll
I
talk
think
about all of it.
a lot of the characters there, particularly the male characters, I wanted to kind of show that. Well, I suppose it's the idea of what does evil look like. Is it the really dark, really very obvious person that you see as the evil character straight away because of how they act and what their deeds are? Or is it the person who I had one character who thought he was a lovely guy, and just misunderstood, and somebody had to point out to him that well, why do the people that come into your life end up dead? You mustn't be that nice. Um, so yeah, looking at, I suppose, exploring the whole idea of what makes an evil person evil, and are we surrounded by nasty people in real life who are really good at hiding it, which I think we are. So I suppose it's just about setting it in the everyday for me, anyway.
I used to work with someone who said that the people who look scary and that you think are the ones that you'd need to avoid are never the ones that you should. It's all because when you hear the crime reports, it's always, oh, they kept themselves to themselves, or they were such a nice person, or
Yeah, that's right.
it's like the fan next door. And she's like, so they're the ones you should be suspicious of.
There's something in that, actually, I would say. Um, and I suppose another thing I would kind of deal with in my writing as well is how well do we know ourselves, first of all, but also how well do we know other people? Um, and I mean, for example, I have just before we came on, I read something about someone who I thought I knew and had a good, handle of what they were like, and I liked the person. And what I read, I thought, really? And I'll not go into who or what, but yeah, it changed my perspective entirely. So to me, there's almost a sinister element in that kind of thing, um, where yeah, you probably don't know what people are truly like a lot of the time, and also depending on the situation that you've been placed into in your own circumstances, you don't always know how you would react either.
True. Going back to see, oh, Philip Jordan's joined us,
Oh yeah, Philip also has a supernatural element to his Belfast crime series. He also has a medium.
and he said that he liked the Haunting of Hill House adaptation. Karen said hi. Leslie said hi. She said you're looking spooky in the dark there.
It
He
had when we first a better move this a wee bit. When we first started, there was
There was a
light
lot of light,
coming in
wasn't
on
there?
my face, so I closed the blinds. So I don't want anyone getting scared. So there we go. Actually, I probably would have been better off in the dark, to be fair. But
Don't be mean to yourself. Sarah wants to know if book two will have some spooky goings on. I'm going to guess she's talking about Write Me a Murder.
um,
What's the news on book two of that as well?
all right, okay. Right. So yes, is the short answer. It will have some spooky elements to it. It's probably, even though Write Me a Murder was probably fairly dark, I think How to Be Dead, which is the working title, is going to be darker still. Um, and story on that at the moment is it was scheduled for release in December, But the Spellbound team and I have decided to actually hold it back a wee bit. We're going to have it in February instead. The official story on that is that obviously there's lots of celebrities who release books around Christmas time, and obviously we don't want to be vying against those. Unofficial story is I've been a lot slower in writing book two than I should have been, and it's not finished. So, but yeah, I am getting there with it, and like Write Me a Murder, it's probably quite complex, which is why it's taken me a wee bit longer. Um, but I'm quite happy with it so far. In terms of story, a lot of people in Write Me a Murder took to the character of Brian Hannon. And without saying too much, I think the next book will explore his past and so on a wee bit more. So yeah, we're getting there, and I'm really enjoying writing it, and I hope that people receive it just as well as they did the first, because I'm still kind of blown away by how well the first one did.
Leslie says she likes dark and supernatural, so she's very excited.
Excellent, good stuff.
Sarah wants to know if is Uther the Wolfhound in book two.
Yes, yes, he is.
You couldn't not have him in book two, could you? After writing him into book one, do you know what I mean? No one would forgive you if he didn't make a reappearance.
He again, he's one of the characters that people really seem to have taken to, as have I. I mean, the stone was found, and it does actually exist in Antrim. And I would say quite frequently. And in our house, it's called Uther now. That's not its name at all, but yeah, he will feature, and probably not so much of a starring role this time, but yes, he's still an important character. I'll put it that way. Plus, everybody knows you never kill a dog off.
He could have his own series. Could just be his own like little crime solving wolfhound.
There's a YA book in there somewhere. This could be, you could be setting me down a path, Carl.
But, you know, the world needs more good YA books.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I know that Sam Blake has done a few recently that I haven't actually gotten around to reading yet, because I would read YA books. But I hear that those are doing really well. And actually, it wouldn't be a genre. People always ask me about, would I go into different genres and so on. I wouldn't be adverse to a YA crime book in some sense in the future. So perhaps Uther might get his day.
I think currently as well as a bit of a trend of YA kind of crime stuff being
Yeah,
quite popular, so it'd be a good time to, or around, you know what I mean? It seems to be the thing at the moment in
yeah.
YA fiction.
Of course, I'm probably behind the curve on that. And time wise, I wouldn't be able to get to it, because I've already kind of started, since we're talking about supernatural, I've already started kind of plotting the next book in my head a wee bit. And that's going to be a return to Farsight Investigations, but it's going to be a bit of a crossover with the Dr. Harkin stuff. And it's going to have quite a bit of a supernatural element in it. Which I'm still trying to get my head around. But so by the time I solve all that and get that written, YA is probably going to be sold 2 years ago.
Do you think there's like, especially when you're going into a thing that people love so much, like the kind of supernatural elements, that there are sort of certain tropes to avoid when you're writing those kind of stories? I mean, you're writing with the medium, so that can already be quite.
Well, I suppose when I was doing Write Me a Murder, it was very much going to be leaning into the crime fiction tropes. And I did wonder that, in terms of, how do I deal with this? And I thought, actually, you just embrace it and run with it. And I suppose I introduced a wee bit of satire into it as well. And I was able to do that through the fact that it was a crime fiction writing group producing stories. So you could kind of lean into that satire a little bit. As far as writing kind of paranormal, supernatural, that kind of book, I think you would do the same. Although I think I think you would have to think carefully about how you handled it, and for me, I usually do that quite intuitively anyway. Because you don't want it to become parody. You don't want it to be like that Leslie Nielsen film. Do you remember the Dracula thing from years ago? Where people are reading it and thinking seriously. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Um, I think from my point of view, I would write it that if it's scaring me and I'm kind of enjoying it, so getting back to that whole thing about writing for yourself initially, then I would hope that other people would take it the same way.
True, but I think there's also sort of elements that people kind of expect or don't. If you think about, you were mentioning Derek Okora earlier, and there was
Mhm.
that whole like most haunted kind of Yvette Fielding was mentioned on the theme as well. That ended up being a little bit kind of cheesy in a way. It's like, how do you manage to avoid making something when you're writing it? Even if you lean into sort of that and think it's scary, how do you manage to avoid it being a bit corny?
Yeah, I suppose it's
You can
difficult.
think about the TV mediums and stuff that can all be a bit.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of that. And I think people have done the whole thing of, well, let's parody it a little bit. Um, so I don't know. I think that it's the type of thing that I think I would just have to write it and then see if I've handled it properly and then redraft maybe. I don't think it's the type of thing that I could consciously process before actually writing the story, if that makes sense. I would have to just go with the flow of the narrative and then review it after that, which is largely, I suppose, how I write a lot of the time anyway.
Leslie said the TV show with Leslie Sharp as a medium ages ago was brilliant to watch.
Well, I was aware of it, but I haven't actually seen it yet. So yeah, that's maybe another one for my to be watched pile, if there's such a thing. Um, yeah, I have heard of that one.
I haven't. I'm not as good with TV series and things as much.
But the big one in our house at the moment is it's an American show called A Haunting, and it's been running. We used to watch it years ago, and then we kind of forgot about it. You know, where you go through phases of what you're watching, and we came across it again recently, and it's up to season 12 now, and it's basically about people who have experienced hauntings in their lives. But what's different about it than the regular kind of ghost hunter things is that they dramatize bits of it. So if somebody is being haunted, you see the ghost or you see the demon or you see whatever it is, and it's all acted out. All very amateurly, and it has the voiceover of that creepy American voiceover kind of guy narrating it all, and it's cheap TV, but it is really good, really addictive, and can really give you a chill. So it's compulsive. Literally, last thing before we go to bed now, we watch an episode of it.
Well, last thing before you go to bed, you're not scared of getting a nightmare.
No, no, not no. My wife probably would be more so than me, but I mean, I could probably walk around the house in the dark and not really think too much about it. I know she probably wouldn't, nor would my daughter, but although she's not allowed, my daughter's not allowed to watch it yet. She's only 12, and no. Um, but yeah, no, not for me. I wouldn't worry so much about nightmares. I sleep that heavily anyway that I probably wouldn't remember.
Sarah says she's watched Ghost Whisperer and Medium. with Patricia
Ghost Whisperer,
Arquette.
yeah, I think I know of. And actually, if there's like a really cheesy one that we watched as well is um, Long Island Medium. Teresa Caputo. So it's an American, um, and she goes around and gives people basically you're watching their readings. And then she did a newer one recently. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's basically the same show, but for some reason she's had to change the name. Something with spirit. Can't remember. But yeah, that's quite good as well. Although, she'll seemingly be out shopping with her daughter and or they go out for lunch or something like that, and the camera just happens to be set up, in a particular place, and she will, go to order a cup of coffee and then end up giving the person who's serving her a reading and so on. So it's all a bit set up, obviously, but it's again kind of compulsive.
I think things like that are sometimes, aren't they? Leslie Lloyd has recommended a book that I think I'm going to keep a track of these comments so I know what to go back and buy.
Mhm.
She said Lisa Unger wrote a brilliant book using a medium granddaughter and grandmother called Ink and Bone.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, I think I'll be doing likewise, like yourself, scrolling back through the comments and seeing what I should be watching and reading.
I really liked, there was a series written by Charlene Harris, who's one of my favourite kind of authors anyway. But my favourite one of hers were a series with a woman called Harp Connolly who could almost see, she'd been struck by lightning and she could sort of, if she could see dead people, but she could sort of see how they died and like find
Oh,
bodies and things. And she was like doing some kind of crime investigations, and it was really good. And people didn't always believe her.
oh, that sounds really good too.
A weird talent, if you know what I mean. And people were like, it's not true when you're just trying to sort of make money off of like.
Yeah, and obviously there's a lot of that with mediums, and it is something I did wonder as well. Um, Although the guy I went to has went on to become a friend, and it doesn't actually really do much in terms of mediumship anymore. I don't know why. But yeah, there's that whole thing of whether it's a scam as well, in real life as well as in fiction. I'm always kind of intrigued by those people who turn up at police stations and start to describe um what they've seen and try to assist the police and so on. And how I do wonder, like, I mean, if that happened in real life, how it would be dealt with. I think there's possibly a book in there as well.
Yeah, that'd actually be a really interesting kind of spin on it, wouldn't it? Because I think there's a lot of like books where those kind of things are written in, but there's never a book kind of from the other angle.
Yeah, that kind of premise. So yeah, I mean, there's scope for that as well.
And as much as we are trying to be sensible, the people in the comments are not helping us. Claire Sheldon says, "Can you remember the Eliza Dushku program? True Calling, I think it was. Her knowing how someone died."
No, no. Um,
I mean, she was in some cracking things, Eliza Dushku, wasn't she? 'Cause she was in Buffy and Dollhouse, and lots of great.
yeah, yeah. I can't think. Um, and for some reason, when you said that, I was getting visions. I don't know why of Michael Landon. Do you remember your man out of Little House on the Prairie?
And the guy was an angel, wasn't he, in a TV series as well?
So yeah, we're obviously down lots of random routes now.
Well, apparently, it wasn't a big hit.
Oh right, okay.
But yet now I really like that idea. Like, because have you done that in the? I'm trying to remember from when I read the Far Set books, and it's a while ago that I read one of those. Have you had elements of that in those where people haven't believed?
Um, Initially, yeah, and well, I think it was more about not necessarily the fact that they didn't believe, but more their reaction to it coming into their lives, and you know that, and being forced to confront it a wee bit. And that actually came to the medium himself, you know, that he had to confront it a little bit, and at one stage confront his own mortality as well. So yeah, it probably did come into it a wee bit. But that, I think that's something that's going to be explored much more deeply in the new Farsight book, the yet to be written one.
The yet to be written one that you're still figuring out.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're saying about you're still figuring it out, is that because you kind of know part of the plot and you don't know quite where it's going, or you don't know how to get to like where you've worked out what the end is, or something like that?
Um, to be honest, it's none of those things. It's the fact that I am still in the process of the new Dr. Harkin, or people are calling the Hannon and Harkin books, or Harkin and Hannon books. It's because my head has to stay firmly in there, otherwise I'll end up so far behind. Um, but also that you know, I'm kind of giving a wee bit of headspace to the new book, but not enough. So I'm just kind of letting the ideas percolate, if that makes sense. And then when I get the How to Be Dead book finished, I can start kind of putting together initial ideas, and usually for me, process wise, when that happens, there'll be something societally that'll kind of link to it, or something will happen, or I'll read something or whatever, that'll just kind of glue it together a wee bit for me. So at the minute, it's kind of off in the ether, kind of starting to build the story itself a wee bit subconsciously for me. You know, that whole thing that when you write more when you're not writing than you do when you are, if that makes sense. I think that's the stage I'm at the moment.
Leslie said you need to concentrate on finishing book 2.
Everybody's been saying that.
I
Leslie, do you work for Spellbound Books, perchance?
I can't cope on with you calling them the Harker and Hannon books because my mind just went to June and House Harkonnen. Like,
A lot of people have been. I've been kind of, when I was thinking about the fact that we're going to be a series, I was thinking, well, obviously it wasn't deliberate, but both character surnames begin with H. So I thought, should I go down the route of Harkin and Hannon? And I didn't. I deliberately just kept them like as the Karen Harkin series. But still, if I'm doing events, or even at Murder One last week, somebody introduced it as the Harkin and Hannon series. So yeah, I think I might have to just accept that it's going to be called that from now on.
I mean, references to June are only a good thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sarah said she's read a series with a medium helping the police as well,
Oh,
written by Julia Vaughan. See all these book recommendations rolling in. I don't have time. Stop recommending books,
I know.
people.
Yeah, I'm much the same. And I also get lots of books from obviously friends and so on who are authors, you know, to read as arcs, or and I'm getting to the stage now, but I just don't have time for that either. So I don't know when I think it's when I retire from writing, I'm just going to like have this huge pile of books that will probably fall on me and kill me at that stage.
And my husband jokes that that's going to happen in our house. Big pile of books will just fall on us and kill us at some point because there's too many of them. And I had quite a low author chat thing in the last month, so I've been catching up on some things, which is quite nice.
Exactly.
Um,
You
but
seem to be really quite voracious in terms of like how quickly you can get through a book.
oh yeah, I can read quickly, but I still have a lot of books to read. What have you read recently and enjoyed?
Well, we were talking about Philip Jordan earlier. I've really enjoyed his Belfast crime series. for me, it's kind of nice to have another author doing something similar to me in a in the same setting, but in a different sense, kind of thing. So that's been really refreshing for me. Just finished Stuart Neville's, obviously, as well. What was I reading before that? Oh, I'm currently reading Callie Taylor's. The title's going to elude me now, but it's about a stalker. Let me see. It's on my Kindle, so I could probably get it up quite quickly.
That's always handy, isn't it? Having your Kindle nearby so you can tell people what you've read. It's
So
almost like you knew that question was coming. In fact, as I asked you it, Leslie posted it on the chat.
every move you make. So yeah, that probably those two would be my most, and Stuart's obviously would be my most recent ones. Although I have a pile of stuff there. But Audible seems to be the way that I'm going to be getting through books at the moment. Although again, since we're talking about paranormal, um, recently for some reason I've been really getting into the, oh, what's it called? It's not assume nothing. I'm gonna have to look at them about podcasts now as well. The Tim Robbins podcast. It's all about hauntings and supernatural and so on. It's in BBC Sounds, I think, and of course I can't find it now. I'd be quicker googling it, wouldn't I?
Do you know,
No,
I
maybe
don't
not.
think I've ever listened to a podcast.
Not even mine.
Well, if I was going to, it would be yours. I'm not good at listening to things. I don't do Audible either because I'm too fidgety. I can't focus.
See, I was in the car, so I don't know why, but I've kind of gone into, and we've talked about music so much before. You know what a music fan I am, but lately in the car I prefer talking. So, oh, this is going to really annoy me. What this podcast was, I'm trying to find my BBC Sounds and I can't. There we go. Uncanny is what it's called. And there's a spin-off that I've been listening to recently as well called The Witch Farm. And it's the same guy does both of them, and it's basically people who um, come on and tell their experience of something that's happened to them in their life, and then they debate it with skeptics and paranormal psychologists and all that sort of stuff. So that's been kind of taking a lot of my time when I could have been reading or doing Audible.
Philip said there's a medium in Ian Rankin's Black and Blue, and spookily those visions come true. I don't know if he deliberately made that rhyme while he wrote it as well.
So there's a poetry anthology from Philip Jordan on the way.
Well, there could be, couldn't there? That was quite well worded, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Philip's a big Ian Rankin fan. And yeah, some of the Rebus books are really good. Yeah, I have to say. So, but I've never really. I like some of the books, and I like. I did like the new TV series as well, but I don't think I would ever be impulsively thinking I'm waiting on the next Rebus book or the next Ian Rankin book. Although, Ian Rankin's brother-in-law is one of our members. I'm not going to say who, and he would be. We would see him a lot locally. We'll put it that way. He's a huge crime fiction fan as well.
Well, I mean, it helps if you're Ian Rankin's brother-in-law to be into crime fiction, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
I think reading James Oswald was one of the things that got me back into reading supernatural stuff. Do you remember, like, his first, like his crime series, like quite at the beginning was quite supernatural.
I'm not familiar with those.
Oh, they were really good.
So that's another one for me then.
Yeah, I haven't read any for ages, which is why I'm really struggling to remember the name. I'm trying to see if I can see any um, on the side of my book files. I have got a book by him to read actually that looks quite spooky, but it's not in that series. But yeah, he was one that sort of drew me back into that,
Right.
liking that kind of thing.
And I suppose we can't do a chat about ghosts and the paranormal without bringing in, have we ever had any experiences?
Do you know? No. And I don't know if I'm a scientist, so I don't know how much I believe in
Ah, right, okay.
things. So, but no, no, I haven't. And I live really close to York, which is very haunted. What about you?
Yeah, I've had a few actually. The the Farset Investigations building, so my own primary school, has recently been renovated. But before that, it literally was derelict, going into ruins. Um, and I was invited along by a paranormal team who were going to do an investigation on it because one of the people within the group had read my book, or had the first terror book was out at the time. And they invited me along, and I thought this would be great because obviously I'm into that kind of stuff. Not so much so that I would really want to be part of an investigation because it would probably scare the life out of me. But I thought it would be great to actually go around and do a wee bit of filming and take some pictures, and it'd be great for my social media profile and building a bit of hype around the book and so on. So I went along and said to them, "Look, I don't want to be part of the investigation." Um, and they said, "Right, will you do the walkthrough with us first? While they're setting up their equipment and all that sort of stuff." And this was in daylight. This was like about 5 o'clock on a Friday evening. But as soon as you go into the building, you're plunged into darkness, and there's like a basement right underneath the building as well, which I'd written about. Um, and we actually had to go into the building through there, which was bizarre. As some of my characters did in the story as well, which made it, for me, in my head, I was kind of thinking this is going to be so cool. But they took me to a particular part of the building, and they've been really chatty, as we were walking through the whole way. And we got to a particular part of the building, and the chat seemed to die down a wee bit. Um, and we were literally just walking along a corridor that would have had classrooms to the right of it, and like a mezzanine thing on the left. And as I was walking along, I had just come from a day at school, so I was wearing a suit, shirt and tie, and whatever. And as I was walking along the corridor, I became aware of something pulling at my sleeves, as I was walking along, and the tail of the suit jacket. And I thought, I'm imagining it, but it seemed to get really, much more intense, and you could actually feel the pulling. I thought, I'm not going to say anything. So we got to the end of the corridor. And one of the team said, "So, did you notice anything there? Did anything happen to you?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I explained what happened, and they said, "Yeah, actually, that has been known to happen to other people as well, particularly males, and particularly males associated with education." Um, because I think it was, obviously it was used as a school for most of its life, but I think at some point during the war, it was used for children who had been injured, as a place where they were, I suppose, looked after, and I think there was a group of nuns who tended them and so on. Um, so that was scary enough as it was. But as I was going through the place, I was just randomly snapping pictures here and there, thinking, because it looked so spooky anyway. Um, and I got home and I was chatting to my wife, and she said, "Let me see the pictures." So she asked me, had I looked at any of them yet? And I said, "No, why? I'll sort it later when I'm doing social media." And she was like, "No, for anything haunted, have you looked for them?" No. Um, so she looked through them, and there were two pictures that stood out. There was one that I'd taken literally of an old door, um, metal door, and it looked like there was a figure, almost like a demon kind of, like a devilish kind of figure in it. Um, and then there was another one where literally beside where I was talking about having that experience of having my sleeves pulled, there was, this really huge, big, high bit of undergrowth. And there, kind of in amongst it, was the like a ghostly figure of a nun, and that kind of tied into what I was saying earlier. So I contacted the paranormal team, and they came back to me and said one of the things, the one on the door, the demonic thing, that's just a trick of the light. But yeah, you have the other one has picked up a spirit, and they'd kind of used it and authenticated it and stuff. So yeah, sure, the kind of very long-winded answer was yes, I have had experience of.
Sarah said she did when she did a ghost walk in Edinburgh.
Right. So the podcast I was talking about earlier, Uncanny, talks about Edinburgh a lot, and it talks about people going to the Edinburgh dungeon, and particularly females have all left with a leg injury, like a scratch on their leg that can't be explained. So that's another interesting one. I don't know if anything's ever been written about it or not, but
No, I don't know. The only ghost story I know about from Edinburgh is the one that Kate Foster wrote about in The Maiden. She didn't write, it's not a ghost story, but she wrote about the real person who became the ghost.
oh right, okay. Now that I would be interested in. It's
And
not read, but the idea of the real person and how they became a ghost, I
yeah,
think that would be fascinating.
the whole, like, The Maiden was one of my favourite books when it came out of the year. It's just astounding.
Do you know, every time I talk to you, I always think to myself, I don't. So yeah, I'm gonna
You
have to
do
type.
stuff like this, it really sort of broadens your reading experience, talking to lots of authors.
Absolutely. Well, now you know I did that on my podcast, which if you'd listened, you would have known. I'm only joking.
Sarah says she's got goosebumps and shivers down her spine. I guess that's from your story about your primary school.
Oh my goodness, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there've been a few other things that have happened to me over the years, but that's probably the most significant one. But yeah, when I was chatting to the medium initially, he said I probably would be one of those people who would be open to things like that if I chose to be, if that makes sense. So I don't choose to be.
Fair enough. I don't know if any of my primary schools were haunted. I went to. Hmm.
Mm. No, I think I'll stick with just having an interest in it rather than dabbling in it. In fact, I was thinking before we came on today, the book that will probably be the new Farsight book will have an element of maybe demonology in it. And usually I research stuff like that. Anything I'm writing about, I would obviously try and do research on it. And I thought, no, I'm not. I'm not going to be able to include that now because I can't do the research because I would be afraid of falling down a rabbit hole there and opening up something that I didn't want. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make
I'm
sense.
probably watching too many of these shows. That's what the problem.
You've got a minute left of our chat. See, that hour's flown by, and we stayed mostly on fiction and topic.
Not one mention of music or well, we did do the 80s thing a wee bit.
We did
Um,
do the authors thing a
yeah,
bit.
we were
We were
very good.
mostly well behaved, weren't we? Remind everyone what they're going to go away and buy.
What am I going to go away and buy?
Hmm.
Or what are they going to go away and buy?
What
Because
are they going to go away and buy?
my Farsight Investigations Belfast, the first book in what was known formerly as the Terror Trilogy, has just been re-released by Spellbound. And obviously Write Me a Murder still out there. Both at 99p on Kindle, I might add. What am I going to buy next? I think I'm probably going to go down the YA route and look at some of the Sam Blake stuff first. Um, and then I would like to be kind of going down the whole kind of supernatural and some of the medium type ones that we were talking about earlier. And I'll do that now, probably when I'm finishing the Write Me a Murder stuff, or How to Be Dead stuff, I should say, so it doesn't influence the next book too much, because obviously I want to keep it original too.
Fair enough.
So yeah, um, I think, and probably I'll get distracted by lots of podcasts and stuff in the meantime. Anyway, I know that one I was mentioned about the witches has a Halloween special, so that's going to be me not doing anything then. I should be writing. I'm way behind.
Then all that's left to say is thanks so much for joining us.
Thank
Again,
you.
always a pleasure to have on.
I always really enjoy it. We always have great fun. And anytime you ask me, I always look forward to it. So thank you for having me again.
No problem.